You're listening to Lab Out Loud, science for the classroom and beyond. I'm your co-host Dale Basler.
And I'm Brian Bartell. Lab Out Loud is a podcast about teaching science done by, well, two science teachers. It's all about science education. Now, the conversation that I wanted to have in this episode, I often seek out our guests and contact them, is about science Twitter. And essentially, it was like a sub-community, like kind of like a subreddit. It's like a sub-community within Twitter that was all kind of focused on scientists or science-minded people, or a lot of it was practicing scientists who wanted to share their craft, their discoveries, their setbacks. Some of it was probably very personal, but some of it's also a way to advance their career. But we use science Twitter to reach out to guests and to learn about what's happening in the field and to even share possible careers for students. And so
and it's really developed. And what's nice about it is it allows us to see, because you talked about like they'll share science, but then they'll also share things from like their life, and it definitely showcases the idea that all types of people are scientists and all types of people have the potential to be scientists. So there was this rich exchange here that lived in Twitter, but there's definitely a decline. Those scientists are leaving Twitter, and our guest for this episode is a science journalist who's going to help us better understand that exodus. That conversation comes up next after the break.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Miriam Vidal. I am a science journalist. I am originally from Mexico, and right now I'm living in Washington, D.C. I was formerly working at Nature, and right now I'm freelancing.
Oh, where do you freelance at? Or do you have a couple places that you stop more than others?
I mean, I'm working on a piece for Slate right now, and I'm working on a regular basis. So this is actually funny. I landed a job in a newscast service. Not newscast service, sorry. I landed a job in a weather report service. So basically, I'm writing the weather on how Washington is doing every day.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're interested in learning about the weather in Washington, New York, and other places in a very, very fun way, you can just check out Currently.
So is it about like daily weather, or is it like long-term like weather, what's happening? Or it sounds like a little bit different than your television weather person.
It's about daily weather, and we usually also give updates on how the weather is doing on other parts of the country, some news about the world, but basically what I'm doing is just writing like a journal, journal-y type posts.
That seems very science adjacent. How much of your work is floats around the topic of science?
All of my work floats around the topic of science.
Did that happen? Did your writing be about science? Was that accidental? Was that intentional? How did that come to be?
Honestly, I like to say that it was fate. I majored in communication sciences back in Mexico, and my particular degree, it was not. We had a couple of classes on how social sciences worked, although its main focus was not that. And then I remember very vividly hating science all my life. I was never able to understand it. I never thought that I was good at it. I never had the fortune of having a good science teacher who could tell me otherwise. So by the time that I finished my degree, I was completely lost because I didn't know what to do with that degree.
Sure.
And I started working part-time in a science museum.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I realized, okay, science is actually cool. Science is actually easy-ish. It can be easy, it can be fun. And while working there, I met the person that would become my first official editor in a science magazine. So we met before when he came as a guest speaker to one of my classes in university, and he kept seeing me around in the museum. So one day he just came up to me and he told me, "Would you like a job as a science writer?" Like, I need someone who can fill out a position that it's recently been open. And I was like, sure. Sounds fun. I don't have a job, so this would, my time in the museum is about to be over. Why not?
Don't
Miriam,
you-
was this in Mexico or are you in the United States at this point?
This was in Mexico.
Okay.
This was in Mexico City.
Now, don't you wonder what your former science teachers are thinking now that you
I
are?
know that they are laughing
Yeah.
because I actually have kept in touch with one of them over the years. And
Oh, yeah.
He keeps teasing me, you know.
Does he give you a grade on your articles? Like A-, you didn't know.
Well,
Not to my face, but I'm sure that he does.
see, that's the thing, though. Science can be presented in the classroom as a sort of an obstacle that only a few can achieve, or it can be, it can be presented as kind of a scary thing. Whereas a science museum, it has to be open to the masses, which is what's supposed to be for school too. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. So the science museum is just another approach of attracting, learners in, basically.
And future science communicators, I would say.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I think we've had a few people on the show that have talked about how they didn't necessarily see a path in science, partly because of the same things that you noted, that science felt hard to them, but then they kind of became, they worked themselves into a science job either directly or like science adjacent. And it kind of warms our heart to hear that. And I'd like to remind the teachers that are listening, like, there might be someone who is in your classroom that is thinking they don't want anything to do with science, but they may surprise you.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the main lesson that I take from this, honestly, from my own career path, is that not everyone. I mean, teachers assume that all the students who are to become scientists need to be thinking in a certain way. They need to be like super logical and super, rational, super, like all these characteristics that are associated with scientists. And that's not necessarily the case. In my particular case, I know that I love science. I enjoyed learning about it. Just my brain works in a different way, and I take different routes to understand the concepts. That doesn't mean that I'm not good at it. It just means that I'm thinking differently about it.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that takes experience to meet other scientists or learn from other scientists as they share about their work and their life. And we know that some of that is done via social media, which kind of brings us to one of the topics we're discussing today. Did you, in your work, kind of get a sense of how scientists use social media?
I mean, we got a sense that scientists like to, use social media to connect. That's I would say that's the main reason. They want to connect. They want to have a platform for their work to be visible, and they want to, build in these connections so they can also advance in their careers and discover new things. Because social media, the thing that social media made possible is so many information that wouldn't have been within reach for these people, or for people in other parts of the world. It was suddenly there. And the more information you get, or the more accessible information is, that can spark ideas, and that can spark future investigations and collaborations. And I think that's why scientists find these platforms valuable.
Yeah, it kind of takes away those barriers. My wife and I went to London last summer, and we went to visit like the Royal observatories and things like that. And you could see like how exclusive it was to sit in those places. And now with social media, you have a chance to have a much, much bigger auditorium for people.
Yes, indeed.
I think there's times where, Dale and I have been doing the show for, a decade and a half, and we've seen the evolution of social media. But, we used to start the show and we used to just kind of look online for contact information. And we found that scientists were very eager to connect with us, and they want to share their knowledge, and they want to talk to us and to a larger audience that way. And we've seen social media kind of grow up and mature and maybe devolve a little bit as well. But we've seen the expansion of that. And one of the things that we've kind of encouraged teachers to do is to reach out to scientists online and make some of those connections that, and I think that we found some of our listeners have actually made some significant connections to scientists in the field and brought them into their classrooms. And that's been a wonderful kind of like a, pairing that way. But is that about to change?
Well, it's definitely changing right now. The thing is that, as you were saying, I think the right word is devolving.
I was trying to be careful, but then I was like, nah, just go right into it.
Just go right into it. Honestly, what we're seeing is just how do you say, a fragmentation.
Mm-hmm.
That is the word that I was thinking. Because before, when social media was beginning, and you told me you have been witnessing this for over 10 years. It grew in very specific platforms.
Absolutely.
And you knew which platforms were, you knew to which platform to go to depending on what you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So the main platform to connect and to find all this information used to be Twitter. And suddenly it's not. And then you have all these other options that scientists are turning to now. And it's being very confusing. Like where is everyone,
So let's kind of go back to that a little bit, and we definitely used Twitter and reached out to groups, usually within what I would guess scientists would call science Twitter. And this was a group of researchers, scientists, and other people that were science-minded that really wanted to connect. And again, as you mentioned, collaborated using Twitter, shared their successes, their setbacks, their just their research to a broader audience. And often that was with other scientists and the global community at large. But we're seeing scientists and some of those people on science Twitter leaving the platform.
Yes, they are leaving the platform in massive ways.
Massive waves. What do you mean massive waves? We've seen it definitely decrease, but you're saying it's bigger than we think?
Yeah, was it measurable? That's what has it been measured, I guess?
I mean, several people have measured it. Right now, I'm just speaking about the article that I wrote, which was accompanied by a survey that we did at Nature.
Uh-huh.
Over 9,000 scientists that we responded to a survey. We reached out, I think, to 170,000 scientists.
Mm-hmm.
Over 9,000 answered, and you definitely can see a decrease of them using Twitter or just moving to other platforms. I think around 46% of them. They mentioned that they were starting to use other platforms.
Do they mention why? Did you ask that question?
Yes. Some of the answers that we got is that they were not, they were starting to see more bots and more attack to science on Twitter and more content that was not being moderated, and they were not. They were in disagreement with all the changes that Elon Musk has been doing to the platform since he took over in 2022. They just don't feel that Twitter it's a safe place to have fruitful conversations about science. They start seeing this as a place where misinformation is more valuable or not being controlled or moderated, and they don't want to participate in that.
It's interesting because it kind of reminds me of when a group of people from a particular country or region are forced to flee, whether it's war or it's famine or something like that, and they get sent to all different places around the world, and kind of
like social media refugees, Dale?
Correct. Like that culture that was there that, I'd imagine that these scientists at one point had a really good thing going here. It was just a buzzing on Twitter, and you could have these conversations and everything, and there was this sweet spot. And now that, let's call it a culture that has been completely broken up and fragmented, and it's a question of, will we ever get that back? Will we ever get that band back together, basically? Or does it have to, grow from seeds in a new place?
One thing that I would like to mention about, what you just said is that, although it may seem like, you have all these social media refugees, it's kind of different in this case. I have a sense, and again, this I can't say that we measured in the survey. But when I was working in this, the sense that I got is that scientists who have more privilege are the ones who are, being permitted to lead first.
Oh, sure.
Because they don't need Twitter anymore to grow their career.
Sure.
Right.
So social media was actually very useful and beneficial for scientists who were early career, because nobody knew who they were at some point, and they were trying to make their audience grow. They were trying to share their work. They were trying to create this collaboration so they could continue moving on and forward with their careers.
And find a stepping stone in their career, because when they apply for a job, one of the first things that an employer might do is look them up on social media. Again, most scientists
Exactly.
should have a repertoire of research behind them, but at the same time, you're still starting careers that way.
And scientists are still living in a system. It's the publish or perish system.
Correct.
You need to be cited. You need to be you need to publish and publish and publish, and and for you to be able to publish, you also need to foster these connections
And an audience.
You need to have an audience. And although it wasn't perfect, social media was helping them to start growing this audience. When I was doing the interviews, one of the scientists told me, he was still holding on to his Twitter account because it took him so many years to finally grow his audience, his list of followers, and suddenly he started seeing that all the followers were fleeing. So he was like, oh my God, no, I have to start doing this all over again in other platforms. And I don't even know in which platform to start, because right now there's no replacement for this unique platform.
Do you see a lot of people completely going cold turkey with Twitter, or do they keep those like the lights on, but I'm not getting my mail here anymore kind of a thing?
I mean, in the survey, some people, they answered that they had completely stopped using Twitter. That's for sure a fact that we had from the results. Personally, I stopped using Twitter a lot. I don't know what's going to happen next. Yesterday, I was reading an article about Musk deciding that he's going to charge all the users now. I don't know if it's that is actually going to happen, but if that happens, I definitely see more people stop using the platform for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I had Twitter a long time, and I still have it, but it's just not as good anymore. And I'm not paying for it. So one could argue, hey, well, if you wanted that great product, I imagine Musk would argue, it doesn't come free. You have to pay for it because, I can't even scroll to a certain point. Or the other really weird thing is now you can't even, if you're not signed in, you can't click on a link to see a tweet that's pushed around in news all the time. So my wife was looking up something and she clicked on it. So do I have to have a Twitter account now just to look at this? And I'm like, yeah, I think you do. And so
it's insane.
It's like all the valves all of a sudden just got shut off, and
I remember trying to use TweetDeck. I don't know if you ever use TweetDeck.
Yeah,
we have been.
All of those.
I mean, I'm a journalist. I rely on my lists.
Absolutely.
In a way. And then I was trying to log into TweetDeck, and I realized that now I have to be subscribed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and and I understand the viewpoint of well, it's not yours, this is despite the fact that it was built by a community, it isn't yours, and they, and he owns it, and they can do whatever they want. I get that, but it's kind of mind-boggling to see such a good thing crumble so quickly. Just something, I shouldn't say crumble, just go from usable for me to not usable so quickly. It was over a summer, it was what's the point?
Right, and there's times where I think about it, and obviously Dale and I are teachers. We're in schools, and we see such a reliance on some of these big platforms for communication. And I think one thing it has done is expose the fragility of that system, where we've seen schools who their communication almost was solely in tweets or Facebook, and that presents a problem now that, if you're relying on these platforms, or these platforms change and don't align to your values, but this is how you've trained your audience to listen into to what you're saying, that presents a conundrum, and how do you move forward? And in many ways, maybe it's providing us an opportunity to say, okay, before we get in deeper, let's look at other options.
And diversify too. I mean, I remember at the very beginning of my career how Yahoo was the king. And I mean, Yahoo had a sign on Times Square right by the ball drop that was very prominent. And they had GeoCities, which is this place where you make all your own websites, and
and Angelfire. Oh, they didn't own that, but yes, back in the day.
GeoCities though, and people had this community building up in there. And I mean, at that time, that felt like this was going to be forever. And now we look back at that as a joke. like it just disappeared and dissolved. And so I think diversifying your social media platforms or your way you communicate has to be there, and just understanding that none of these things can last for forever. But that's harder to do. Also, because if you got to fragment across, if you have to diversify across different platforms, that's a lot of work, first of all. And then secondly, now you're grooming multiple audiences, and you know, it'd be better if you could bring them all to one space. So it's kind of a struggle.
I mean, I think it's a battle between what you want and what you have the time to do. And also, one thing that I would say is that this is an opportunity for universities and research centers and, you know, all the institutions to start getting more involved into how they reach out people, how they reach out their audiences. You know, again, when I was talking to some sources, they would tell me about the system, you know, in which universities, they were really forcing their scientists to join Twitter, you know, just you need to join, you need to share your work, or you would have classes, science classes, and one of the requirements of the classes was, you know, all the students need to have a Twitter account. And, you know, that was it, or that was one of the most important things that they would do. Now they really need to start finding new ways in which they can actually support their own community, sharing the information, you know, their work.
Do you see more work going towards like their own websites, like, you know, the universities, the organizations, the individuals, for example, taking, you know, kind of their own website, their own platform that they're in control of? Do you see people moving towards that or building that back up?
Like, is Nature going to have like some buzz community or something? Like, you know, it has to have some kind of scientific kind of you know, feel to it.
Hive.
I couldn't tell, honestly. I couldn't tell. I think personally, not based on the results of the survey, I think that could happen. I also see more people starting to bolster other platforms. I think LinkedIn, it's right now one of the main platforms that they are trying to use to build community, to build connections, to share information.
Sure.
You know, I think for obvious reasons.
Yeah, where are people going? So LinkedIn, you mentioned one. Where are they moving to?
Originally, they were moving to Mastodon. Well, in the survey, we got that Mastodon was the most used platform after Twitter, and then it was LinkedIn, Instagram. Threads had just started to become a thing when we started doing the survey, and a lot of people were trying it. I think we had like a massive sign up of users on its first week, and then but right now it you know, a lot of people just stopped using it. I think they tried it, they realized that, oh well, maybe this is not a thing, and then they just stopped. Maybe that will change now that Musk is deciding to charge Twitter, like everyone on Twitter. If that happens, you know, with these things, it's just like a wait and see. It's a process that it's actually developing right now.
What was the other one? Blue Sky too. That was the other one that's kind of floating around, but that was been invite only for a long time.
That one too, yes.
Yeah.
And I have dabbled in a couple, and I know Dale has, and it's kind of hard to rebuild an audience that you curated over a decade or two.
Yes, but that also, you know, it's terrible. Honestly, it's terrible because all of the information that is being lost in one place, and I think that was the main reason why, particularly, I love Twitter. It was all the information of the world just concentrated in this amazing place. But if we stop for a second, and I guess if scientists stop for a second and realize, okay, from these 1,000 connections, for example, that I had, from these 1,000 followers, how many do I actually read every day? How many do I actually connect with every day?
Sure.
Miriam, you may have a better pulse on this than we do, but we have a colleague who tells us that, you know, in other countries, Twitter might be the news that they rely on when their country has blocked other access. Is that a casualty, and is that a real casualty that we're seeing with Twitter changing? Is that we can't rely on this as a news source anymore either? I
would say yes and no. When I was talking to scientists in other countries, especially in countries that rely that much on these platforms, there is a loss, of course, especially because, you know, that was the main platform or in some cases the only platform they had. But, well, not the only platform, the main platform. But one of the scientists who I interviewed, she was telling me, scientists will adapt. Scientists have been adapting. We have been adapting all of our lives. This is no different. The same way that Twitter arrived, we were doing fine before Twitter, maybe not great, but we will find other ways.
Sure.
It's going to be more difficult for some people, again, because they don't have the resources to, go to conferences, or they don't have the resources to just start promoting their work in the same way that scientists in first world countries have.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I would say, that is the biggest loss.
We'll be right back. Was there any feedback on, like, basically people were kind of glad it's over? Like, maybe looking for the new opportunity? Like, we could potentially get something new and better out of this.
I wouldn't say glad is the right word in this case. I think they are just preoccupied
Positive?
at this moment.
Yeah.
I think some of them are trying to stay positive, but mostly they are confused and
Sure.
a little bit exhausted too.
Mm-hmm. Well, it keeps, you if you're following multiple platforms, that takes a lot more time. And there's been times that I've wasted hours and hours on end on Twitter, and I like to think of it as learning and growing myself. But at the same time, if you have to do that to 2 or 3 platforms to just keep up, that's exhausting.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, I think people are just going to have to figure out, in which platform are the most people that they want to connect with.
So you're saying we need to have you back in like 2 years and see where the dust has settled.
Well, definitely. I think in around 2 years we need to do another survey.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I tinkered around with Mastodon. Like, I actually use Mastodon instead of Twitter now. And I should point out to our listeners, we are saying Twitter because that's its URL name, twitter.com. I know it's called X, but when you go to X, it goes to twitter.com. So until the leader figures that out, I'm not calling it X because it's stupid.
And after this show airs, it's very possible our accounts may be disabled, but who knows?
I quit it already. Mine's still there, but I still I tried Mastodon, but it's I think I've had the experience that you were describing. I couldn't find everybody there. I used a couple of the tools though that looks through Twitter. The followers you have on Twitter, it looks if they had Mastodon posts and it can pull them over. Sort of. You have to kind of do some manual stuff. And I did a little of that. So I have some key people, and there's a few people in there that I was following on Twitter. So it's like, oh, that's even. That's kind of the same people I looked at anyways. And but then it was kind of a time to get a new group of followers. So now I found myself following some of our local politics a little bit more because they're there. And just different things have ported over kind of nice. But so in that respect,
you get to build a new bubble.
Yeah, in that respects, I got to build I'm going to call it a window, not a bubble, but a new window into other things. So I
imagine it's kind of like dating. Like, that seems really tiring to me, but at the same time, there's some exciting things that you might learn, in getting out to different areas.
I mean, if you have the time and if you have the energy to start dating different apps, why not?
I don't, but yeah, I sort of remember dating. There were some exciting things about that.
I think Brian and you also, we both dated pre-apps, right?
We have.
Yeah. So that's an alien world to us that we want nothing to do with.
And even dating in the apps, that doesn't guarantee any success, let me tell you.
Well, where do you find your scientists now?
I mean, I use the ways that I was doing before, through their work. I go to Google Scholar. I try to browse in the, different journals. I basically find them through papers.
Yeah.
That,
okay.
I had previous connections also that I had built, over emails. I have their email, so I can just email them now. It's through colleagues also, because that is the thing, when you're a journalist,
sure.
Assuming that you're working in the right associations, we're all about collaboration.
And as frustrating as this path may be, I do see a future where, again, the goal of Mastodon is to be decentralized. So you can't have someone completely change everything on a dime, and that might be a better future for us in the end.
I mean, I don't know if it's going to be better. I don't know if it's going to be worse. The only thing that I can tell for sure is that it's very interesting to watch this unfold in real time.
Yeah,
That's true.
but I'm not going to join Threads if I can avoid it. That's where I'm trying to draw the line.
I mean, I haven't been joining any other platform, to be honest, because again, it's like dating. I don't want to go through the process again.
I have the exact same feeling. Someone will send me like something new and I'll sit in front of that and I'll click it and there's a login screen and I'm just like, no. And I just don't want to. I just like, this is a whole nother thing I got to keep track of. And I have so many accounts and no.
But I guess the opportunity is that you can have slightly different profiles and see which gets more traction too. Kind of like dating apps, I imagine.
That sounds awful. I don't want to do that either.
In my particular case, I think I might have to at some point. I may not have that much of a choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm just
especially
not
in
really looking forward to that. My day is too busy as it is.
Yeah, this is where a bot should be created just to handle that for you. You could just kind of
Maybe that will become the next thing. We don't
pre-feed
know.
in
Maybe
a machine that signs, that'll like, would you like to join the next social media? And then kind of bring you into it too. Yeah,
you
that's
know what
why.
we need? I don't know if you have seen the movie Hair, but we need a Samantha in our lives.
Yeah,
someone-
yeah.
Sure.
I mean, it might be coming, right? It might be there.
I
know
think it might be coming, or maybe here and we don't know about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because they're already working on AI that's going to take care of like robo phone call things where you have to call in and go through many different steps to press the buttons. And now they have an AI that just makes the call for you and goes through everything until you get to a person for you. So that's Samantha, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll get that for social media and then we'll be set.
Oh my God. I really hope that happens.
And then so much science will flourish because scientists don't have to bother with account creation or anything like that. The world will be a better place.
Well, but think about also, that if scientists don't have to bother with this, and this is also something to consider, to take into consideration. Thinking people are the ones who are actually curating the content.
Right.
What has been creating a lot of noise and a lot of fake news and misinformation in social media is people sometimes, but mostly bots.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll have to find a way to continue doing that. And I think that's why a lot of scientists just leaving Twitter, because I will never call it X, not even if it changes on the URL. I will never call Twitter X. That's on a personal,
It's like the Voldemort of apps.
on a moral basis, I will never call it X.
It's the new Coke of.
Exactly, I will never. But speaking of Twitter, if all the scientists who were actually sharing accurate information are gone, that is another problem that we have right now. Who is staying?
Yeah.
Can
for
you
sure.
actually trust all the information that you're getting from there? And I think that's an oversight on part of Musk.
Right.
All the value of the platform, which was the sharing of valuable information, it's gone, or it's being lost in like very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, he has said like he wants to remove some of the guardrails that were in there that he viewed as stifling speech in essence. But
we found out that there are actually studies that found out, and I cite this I quote this on my article, that misinformation grew.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
After he arrived. And right now he's saying, I want to charge everyone because this is the best way that I can find to just stop, bots from sharing misinformation. Okay, but do you realize that not everyone will have the opportunity to pay for the service? And who is actually going to have the opportunity to pay for the service? That is not actually a solution.
Right.
Yeah, it's probably hard to explain that $8 a month is something to someone who has the most money.
Exactly.
And if your audience isn't there on the other end to receive it, then what is the value of paying for it to broadcast?
I don't want to bring this to science fiction, but Brian and I both read Neil Stephenson's book, The Fall. And there's this whole section in there in which they have all the news is completely bot driven. And,
no.
And this is exactly what it reminds me of. And we just talked about like having an AI. People of privilege had an AI that could do a better job of weeding the news and getting
sifting through
and getting actually the real stuff. Because basically, a bot was released into the whole news system to pollute it. And so people who have privilege could pay for a service that was personalized and would, sift it and get it, pruned of weeds. And then people who didn't have money used like the free ad version that was shared across thing, and it was just full of, it was misinformation and everything like that. That whole section seems a little too real right now.
I mean, I went to a panel a couple of months ago. I think it was around May, maybe. The whole panel, it was like an event that happened on the span of 3 days or so.
Uh-huh.
And it was all focused around misinformation.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then you start realizing the big impacts that misinformation is having in the world. And then you get this scary thought that misinformation is actually what's going to end the world.
Jeez. So this story comes back to what we try to teach like our 9th grade science students is when you're getting science sources, when you're getting information, look for a creditable source, look for multiple sources.
What is the process of science and how we got to that?
Look through the steps of the scientific method, look for that work on there. However, now in a world where misinformation is being essentially built as a weapon, are there additional tools that we should, teach our science students about?
Oh, that's a big question.
That's a second interview right there, Dale.
Or do we stick to those classics, look for credible, because now, it's like, how do I find a credible source? Like,
I mean, I think you can find credible sources, which are sources that that they have a reputation. Still, nothing guarantees you anything. You keep reading these investigations, for example, about researchers just publishing polluted research or data that they tamper with. You can never know 100% for sure that something is actually real. But not going to that, not going to those extremes. I think just as students realize and learn that they need to be able to develop critical thinking. And there are also a lot of I don't have the names right now or the organizations that offer this, but I know that there are actually organizations out there who train students and children on how to navigate this social media landscape. And how can they actually sort out the misinformation, and how can they actually have a healthy relationship with?
Well, we do see a media literacy, kind of a growing media literacy focus in schools. And, at the same token, many educators aren't necessarily trained or equipped to deal with that themselves.
Or there just aren't hours in the day.
Well, that too.
But if teachers don't have enough hours in a day, that's where the trained specialists come in. Maybe the schools, I don't know, can approach these organizations and they can bring, I don't know, like a week train, a 1 week workshop.
Sure,
right.
Sure. Yeah.
Or maybe there's someone on staff. We have school counselors, school psychologists. Maybe we need a media literacy guru in every school too.
I think that would be a really big step and first step. And honestly, I think the step right now is just for schools to realize that it's important to address and it's important to regard and, acknowledge that misinformation is real and that it's a really, really big issue that they need to start dealing with.
Miriam, do you see new scientists coming into the field who are better navigating through this, or who desperately need more help wading through all of this? Like we just said, like how to deal with misinformation and disinformation and navigating through social media. Do you see hope or light at the end of the tunnel, or do we have a lot more work to do?
I think both. We have a lot of more work to do, but I also see scientists becoming very, very interested. I see more scientists who are becoming activists in different fields, in things that they believe in. I would say that maybe right now our biggest issue are not the scientists, but politicians.
Yeah.
That's not, again, another completely different conversation, but I see more scientists willing to stand up for the things that they believe in. And I see more scientists trying to train themselves on how to communicate their science better in easier ways. Again, I don't have the numbers to back this up. I can't say, oh, yeah, we have more scientists now than before interested in doing this. But based on the people that I have talked to, based on the people that I have the pleasure of working with, I do see scientists, more engaged.
Good. Well, we we thank you for your conversation and definitely giving us a lot of ideas on where to go from here, and in, I guess, leaving Twitter or thinking about other options, and how we might connect to scientists that are trying to gain a footing in some of those other platforms.
Is there a place where listeners can find your work? Kind of right back to the original question, right?
My years in the Science Museum are buried in the past, but you can find my work in my website. I can just give you the URL. It's miriamvidalvalero.com.
Okay, we'll put that in our show notes too.
Yep, the first I, it's Hawaii. Thank you, Mom.
All right, well, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was very fun.
Thanks, Miriam.
Bye now. Well, what did you think of Miriam's interview?
Well, that was, it's definitely one of those stories that makes you think a lot about what has transpired under our noses and what is happening right now and what's going to happen.
Yeah, you talked about, or she mentioned about, Twitter just evolving and becoming more difficult to use and those kinds of things and different, barriers there. And I think she even mentioned about charging, and you just sent me a story.
Yeah. So we do have these. Yeah, we have actually, like, even this week, we see stories about the decline in Twitter, like in the actual numbers. We see that, it's free right now. But as you mentioned in the podcast, Dale, we're part of that product. We are part of building this ourselves. Yeah. And to be charged for it now, it's going to be an interesting, I guess, evolution or de-evolution.
The reason I said that is because if I'm wrong, go crazy in our comment section and correct me. But I'm pretty sure it was launched at like South by Southwest and got off the ground. And things like the @ symbol and hashtag were what users used. And then that became functional elements later in Twitter.
And have drifted into other platforms.
Exactly. So like that kind of thing I always felt like was so homegrown. But the article you sent me said they're going to begin charging users $1 per year, which is nothing except for the fact that you got to have this now payment registration, $1 per year to send tweets. And then the other article that I saw, and these just came in, is that there is traffic is down 19% in the US for Twitter. So it's, certainly not limited to science Twitter. These social groups are leaving.
But it hits science Twitter especially hard, I think, because I think there's two things that we talked about. And I see this with schools as well. Do we really want to be tethered to something that basically we don't necessarily align our values to? That's one thing.
Yeah.
But the other piece is, now we're seeing so much misinformation and disinformation being shared. And, we're in the middle of two conflicts worldwide. And one of them just unfortunately started with Israel and Hamas there. And we're seeing this enormous amount of misinformation being shared over social media platforms, but Twitter in particular. And now, if you think about scientists battling misinformation over the last few years, I think there's a lot of people who are just saying, that's it, we're done. This is not a place I want to play in anymore. The sandbox is filthy.
Well, but the other thing is, if you just abandon the sandbox, then you might just have some bad actors playing in that sandbox, hiding things in the corner and things like that. That's another concern I have.
Well, this is true, but I think what we're seeing too is advertisers are also leaving the sandbox. And some of, as you mentioned, the platform's down quite a bit. There's a lot of people like us that are just kind of, I still own the property, but I'm really not doing anything with it.
Yeah, that's me.
Kind of letting it go feral.
Yep. I started a Mastodon, as I mentioned in the episode, and but this show had a Twitter account. It still does.
I was about to say we still do, but
we still do. I don't think I'm going to keep posting to it anymore, just because I'm kind of done with it. I guess we have to figure out different social media options where we could go for that. I have put some stuff on LinkedIn, so if you're in LinkedIn, you can search for Lab Out Loud and go from there. You're still doing Facebook, right, Brian?
Yes, Facebook is still there at the moment, and but it is a platform to reach people still, and so we're still posting to that.
Yeah. So, but mainly we're going to keep using our website, which we've done for the entire duration of the show, which is laboutloud.com. So we have comment capability there. We have links for you to get and move. So if something changes, we can move people around there and things like that. So. I'm glad we have our website as sort of our tent for where we can put everything in. So
yeah,
that's beneficial. So
well, and the website is great. You can go there to listen to episodes directly. You can download them from there. But remember too that we're available on any pretty much podcast catcher that you have out there. Anything major, you should be able to search for Lab Out Loud in your favorite podcast app and find us there.
Sure. All right, well, that's it on this episode. Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye now. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to our show. If you'd like to learn more about this episode or other episodes, visit our website, laboutloud.com.
Want to hear more shows? Search for Lab Out Loud in your favorite podcast app.
Our show is produced and edited by us, Dale Basler and Brian Bartell. If you have questions, guest suggestions, or something else you'd like to share with us, please visit our website at laboutloud.com/contact.